This program is brought to you by Emory University.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started, even though some people are still joining us, and believe it or not, we still have some lunches out there. So all y'all students, if you are on any kind of social media, go ahead and ping your friends and say, if you signed up for a lunch, come and get it, because the program is starting. But it's fine for people to join us midstream. I mean, the whole point of this program is that we want people to feel comfortable, right? So for those of you who do not know me, AKA people who are not students here, I'm Catherine Brokaw. I'm the Dean of Students here at Emory Law, and I lead the Office of Student Engagement, formerly known as the Office of Student Affairs. And we are very grateful to see you all here for today's very important program. We're kicking off a week of wellness-related activities here at Emory Law. We're calling it Wellness Week to counterpart with our Welcome Week, which is our new student orientation back in August. And the reason we're doing that is that it has become increasingly clear to all of us, both in legal education and in the legal profession, that law students and lawyers need this kind of support. A big thank you to Dean Robert Shapiro, whose support for this program has been unwavering and constant. He regrets that he's not able to be here today. He is out of the country on law school business to bring us more students. Thank you to the Dave Nee Foundation for supporting this program. Uncommon Counsel is a program of the Dave Nee Foundation. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a bit, but without their support and participation, we would not be in a position to make this happen. Thank you to Highland Bakery for providing the nutritious lunches. Nutrition is obviously a very important piece of wellness and stress management, and so we appreciate that. Hold on to your raffle tickets that you should have gotten on check-in. At the end of the program, we will draw 2 tickets for $25 gift cards to Highland Bakery so you can continue to nourish yourselves. Here's a caveat: you have to be here at the end of the program to win. A big thank you also to Vice Dean Bobby Adier, who is here with us today, who's also deeply concerned about these issues and has joined us to hear all of your thoughts, since this is not just a talking head program. We look forward to hearing from you all, too. Thank you especially to Jenny Hayata Fernandez and to Deb Floyd in my office, as well as Rhonda Heermans, Amy Tozer, and many student volunteers who have helped to make this happen. You will hear today that there is a problem in law school and the legal profession with unacknowledged stress, depression, and anxiety. And the reason I say unacknowledged is the good news is that if people acknowledge that they may be having some of these feelings, there are so many things that can be done to stop that cycle, to intervene, to feel better yourself, or to support a friend in need. And that's what we're really here to talk about today, is to acknowledge that there is an issue, but also to discuss the proactive steps that we can all take to be more resilient as professional students and as working professionals also. Many studies show that a reasonable, manageable level of stress is actually constructive in many endeavors. And many of you relied on that sort of drive and challenge to become top students, which is how you ended up here. The problem we see, though, is that if stress gets beyond this constructive point where we feel challenged and we feel able to rise to that challenge, then the learning curve starts to go like this. And that's not good in law school, and it's not good in life. But particularly if your whole achievement and your profession depend on mental resilience and brain power, you really don't want to find yourself going past that point. So what we will be talking about today is how to identify optimal stress and less optimal stress, and how to navigate that area where you want to be and stay in that area and not go down the downward slope. There is a lot of helpful information. You're going to get a ton of information from our speakers and panelists and presenters today. There's a lot in the printed materials that we've provided for you. There is also information available out in the atrium. We have colleagues from Emory University and literature from the State Bar of Georgia. There are all kinds of resources. Some of them are available out at the tables outside, so make sure when you leave here to stop by those tables and find out, what the resources are, both here on campus for students and through the State Bar of Georgia for both lawyers and law students. The way I like to put this, and I'd like you to have this thought in your heads as we start this program, everybody expects doctors, as a matter of course and professionalism, to manage the fact that they get exposed to germs as part of their profession. What they do is they fix illness, for instance. And as part of that, they're going to be exposed to germs. And nobody gets tied up in knots over whether or not doctors should wash their hands, right? We just expect that they're going to do that as a way of staying healthy and well themselves. And in that same context, I would suggest that lawyers get exposed to stress as an occupational hazard, in a sense. Other people bring us important problems to solve. And the top set of materials in your printouts, in your folder, talks about some of the very specific challenges that lawyers face as lawyers that can generate a lot of stress that feels unmanageable. Lawyers often feel stigma about acknowledging that they feel this stress or anxiety or depression, and I would ask that none of us take that on. This shouldn't be about stigma. This should be about professionalism, about competence, about resilience, about being the kind of supportive professional community that we want to be, so that all of us can be the best professionals we can be to serve our clients' needs, just as doctors are expected to remain healthy to meet their patients' needs. It's as simple as that, and it's as complicated as that. So now I'm going to introduce our distinguished guests and speakers. You will see on the back of your yellow program, we have several bios. Unfortunately, Dr. Campus and Dr. Ndala are unable to join us today, but we still have Dr. Dana Weiner with us. Dr. Kate Bender is our guest here from the Dave Nee Foundation. She has worked as a mental health counselor for college students. She has a PhD, and she focuses on suicide prevention among students in higher education. That is how she connected with the Dave Nee Foundation, whose mission is in part to reduce the level of suicidal thinking and, of course, action on the part of law students in particular. And she'll tell you a little bit more about that. You all know me, no need to repeat that. Robin Fraser Clark is the immediate past president of the State Bar of Georgia. She graduated from Emory Law in 1988, having served as the 50th president of the State Bar from 2012 to 2013. She is only the second woman to serve as president of the State Bar of Georgia, and we're very proud to claim her as one of our own. She's a plaintiff's personal injury lawyer and a sole practitioner. Jessica Ames is also an Emory Law graduate. She graduated in 2000, clerked for Judge Willis Hunt in the Northern District of Georgia, then practiced at King & Spalding, my old law firm, as a senior associate in the healthcare team. She has just finished up, or is finishing, a master's in social work, and is now part of a private counseling practice in Inman Park called P2 Partnerships. Bob Rubin, another Emory Law graduate. I hope you're getting the message here that your alumni community cares about this and wants to help you on these issues. Graduated from Emory Law in 1986. He's been practicing criminal defense law in state and federal courts for over 27 years. He teaches criminal trial advocacy and expert witnesses as an adjunct professor right here at Emory Law. And he and Jessica are here because they recently gave a widely applauded program on similar issues to the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And the grapevine has it that this is one of the best programs that group has had in years. So we're eager to hear from them and very grateful that they're here. Darrell Sutton is the 68th president of the Georgia Young Lawyers Division. He practices in the area of insurance defense litigation, is a member of the State Bar of Georgia Executive Committee, and has served on the bar's disciplinary investigative panel and so many of its committees that I can't possibly list them all. They're in your program. He's a trustee of the Institute of Continuing Legal Education in Georgia and a member of the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism and the Commission on Lawyer Competency. And may I just say that the Chief Justice's Commission is well aware of this program and that we're doing that, and they are very supportive of us hosting this program here at Emory Law. And last but not least, Dr. Dana Weiner is the coordinator of biofeedback and stress management services at Emory University's Counseling and Psychological Services. She's a clinical and sports psychologist, and she specializes in teaching students strategies to better regulate their emotions in order to reduce stress and optimize performance potential. So if you think of law school as a marathon, Dr. Weiner is your woman. She also oversees the very popular stress management classes that are available here on campus and conducts individual therapy. So she's an enormous resource for the law school, for the whole Emory campus. So now I'm going to turn the program over to Robin Clark, who will sketch out the issue and say a few words about why this matters to the State Bar of Georgia. Well, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robin Fraser Clark. Glad to be back at my alma mater. And I want to thank Dean Brokaw for having me and doing this program. It's very important. Vice Dean Abadea, thank you. And Dean Shapiro, who's a friend of mine, I thank him as well for his support. There are 44,000 lawyers who are members of the State Bar of Georgia. I don't know if you knew that. The State Bar hopes you become a member of the State Bar of Georgia. I'm here to tell you about suicide prevention and what the State Bar of Georgia is doing about it in the legal profession for our members. It's a subject that I never thought I would deal with, never crossed my mind, certainly never crossed my mind even years ago when I was a student sitting out in those chairs. And it never crossed my mind before I became sworn in to lead the State Bar. But what happened was one of the first things I did on behalf of the State Bar official representation was I had to attend the funeral of a past president of the State Bar. We came to learn that this past president, who was a dear friend of mine and a role model, and someone who would say not only was he extremely successful in his town in Georgia as a lawyer, but he was also one of the most positive, upbeat persons you would ever meet in your life. Everyone who met him loved him. And he killed himself. And his death at such a young age was shocking, but the manner of death was even more shocking because everyone thought he was extremely positive, upbeat, always successful, extremely successful. And so we couldn't understand what was going on. And as we looked into it, we found out that professionals who commit suicide, that those things are often said about them. They're upbeat, they're positive, they're happy, they're successful. I'm like, why is that? Well, we started, several of my friends, past presidents of the State Bar who were friends with this man, and we said, we need to do something about it. But when we started looking into it, as it turned out, in the first 9 months of my presidency, we had 3 Georgia lawyers that we know of kill themselves. One killed himself. He was a federal public defender in downtown Atlanta. One killed himself in our State Bar building parking deck. And ironies of all irony, I was on the telephone with our executive director, Cliff Brazier, and we were planning on what we would do to create a suicide prevention program. that day. Long telephone call, over an hour. I get off the phone, and 2 minutes later, Cliff called me back and said, I have some bad news for you. And it was to tell me of this lawyer's suicide in our parking deck. Now, I'm going to tell you something, folks. If that doesn't get your attention, you're not alive. And we decided we have got to do something to try to help prevent this problem, help our Georgia lawyers. As Dean Brokaw said, stress is at the root of it. Also, substance abuse is a problem among our profession, which can lead to depression. Stress can lead to depression. I'll leave it for the professionals to talk a little bit more about that. But suicide in lawyers is the third leading cause of death. Now that is remarkable, isn't it? That's behind old age and heart disease, third leading cause of death. And lawyers are 6 times more likely to kill themselves than any other profession. And why is that? A couple of things that Dean Brokaw mentioned. One, perfectionism. Most of you here, I'm going to bet, are perfectionists. You wouldn't be sitting where you are if you weren't. You like to have everything perfect. You want your performance to be perfect. You want your performance, you wanted in college and now in law school, to be perfect. And folks, we can't be perfect. No one is. No one can achieve perfectionism. But the same thing that helps you be so successful as a law student is also the same thing that puts you at risk for suicide. And if you think about it, you'll understand that. Another P word that puts us at risk as lawyers to commit suicide is pessimism. Now, I'm a trial lawyer. I go and try cases in our Georgia courts. But one of the things that makes me successful as a trial lawyer is to be pessimistic. I have to think of the worst case scenario in every case and every client I represent. I have to think, what's the worst that could happen? What's worst case scenario? If everything went to hell in a handbasket, what would happen to my client? And so you have to be pessimistic to be able to do your job. Even if you're not a trial lawyer, if you're just advising clients, your job will be to consider what's the worst case scenario for my client. Pessimism will make you good at your job. Unfortunately, like perfectionism, it puts you at risk for suicide. So we started talking about at the State Bar, what can we do to help our members to start a conversation? Here's one thing Dean Brokaw mentioned, a stigma. There's undoubtedly a stigma about suicide. No one wants to talk about it. When it happens, no one wants to say this person died because of suicide. There is a stigma. I believe we have to remove that stigma and have an open, honest conversation about it, about the risk, about how to recognize the risk, how to recognize warning signs in a colleague and a friend, and what to do about it. And so we created this suicide prevention, first to start a conversation, and now we are starting the campaign to make our members aware of the issues. And to tell our members, yes, you have a moral obligation. Duty might be the word, but at least a moral obligation. When you see this in a friend, here in a fellow law student, a colleague, a friend, in your law career, most likely it would be your law partner, the person you spend the most time with. Anyone you're around, you have a moral obligation to step in and say, we can help, let me help you. And so we started this campaign, and I'm going to show you a video that we've created, a very short version. One of the first things we did, we went to people who are members of the bar who were all touched by suicide, which is very easy to do because most people have been touched by suicide. But you'll see in this video a couple of lawyers who willingly said, I want to be involved to get my story out there. If I can save a life, then it's all worth it. And so slowly by slowly, we're getting rid of the stigma. And in our video, we have different versions. And I went and made a point of getting every board that presents continuing legal education, because every lawyer has to have 12 hours of it per year. But this video, a portion of it, is shown at every CLE, so that every member of the State Bar of Georgia, everyone who has to take CLE, will see it at least one time in this coming year, and we're already starting that. And so it may sound ambitious to say, not only is the state bar doing all these things, making you a better lawyer, educating you, we're also saving lives. And I'll tell you a little story about this, because Dean Brokaw is going to tell me when we have to show the video. I don't want to run out of time, but I'm going to tell you a little story about our campaign so far. We simply had an article in our daily report, the legal newspaper of our community, write a story about it. They were very interested about it, and mainly because of this lawyer who had killed himself in our parking deck. And we started talking about it, and one article was published in our daily report. The next day, or actually that night the article appeared, we got a telephone call from a young woman who had been in court that day and had been treated so poorly by the judge, which happens, I'm sorry to say, that she wanted to kill herself. She got home and saw that article. She was ready to kill herself that night and got in touch with the chair of our Lawyer Assistance Program, LAP, Chuck Pecor, who you're going to see in this video, because of that article. And he went and met her that evening, got her into treatment the next day, and saved her life. The next day, I was with the journalist who wrote that article at another event, and I told him about it. And I said, you know what? Journalists don't often get to brag that they helped save a life, but you really did in this situation. So we've gotten our legal newspaper involved, and they want to help more because they realize how powerful a program it is. The Lawyers Assistance Program, great program. It offers 6 free counseling sessions, completely confidential. And one of the things lawyers are you talk about stigma, lawyers are so worried about admitting they have a problem because they're worried about losing their law license. They're worried about being suspended from practicing law. And we've got to get the word out. Get help. It's completely confidential. If you don't get help, then yeah, you really might be jeopardizing your law license. But if you seek help and get the help, it's confidential. And what we found is once someone who is in that downward spiral, considering taking their own life, once we get them help, it works. That's the great thing. It actually works, and they rebound and get healthy again. We know for our campaign through various communications, emails, that we have saved at least, that we can count for sure, 5 lives, which I don't care what case I win, I'm going to tell you, there's no better feeling than knowing that something I've been involved in actually helps save a life. And that's the name of our campaign, How to Save a Life, borrowed after the song by The Fray. You might be familiar with that. I'm going to read one email to you that I received from the chair of our suicide prevention committee, Randy Evans. And we have a committee that is working on this issue, created this video and doing a lot of other things, getting the word out. Everyone on that committee either had some family member or someone in their lives either attempt or actually commit suicide, or they contemplated committing suicide themselves. Everybody on that committee, and let me tell you, it's a strong committee, but finding people who have been touched by suicide, unfortunately, is not that difficult. Let me read this email to show you how important what we're doing today and how important your presence is today. Robin, the purpose of this email is just to let you know of a situation that happened. One of our colleagues, someone we both know very well, called after seeing the article on suicide prevention and the related column relating to avoiding suicide. He had mapped out his plan. It was actually frightening at the level of detail, but he decided to reach out. We have talked several times, and I've encouraged him to get help and put him in touch with folks who can and have helped. He was diagnosed as clinically depressed and is now much better. I do not want to make him a public figure. While there is no permanent cure for depression, I think based on my conversations with him and his wife that we have for now saved at least one life with our efforts. It will not be the highest profile thing we have done together or even the most influential, but I think it is definitely one of the most important things that we have done, especially to his wife and family. She has been so generous in her thanks for all the help in avoiding a horrible tragedy for her family and yet another tragedy for our bar. While I will honor the request for absolute confidentiality, I did tell them that I would pass on their appreciation to someone else who cared enough about every member of our bar that she did something that made a difference. In this case, that someone was you. Now, as you watch this video, it will talk about warning signs, and I know some of our other speakers are going to talk about warning signs, what to look out for. What I'm here to tell you is I encourage you to intervene. You may be saying, Robin, that's personal. That's none of my business. I don't want to, I don't want to get involved if it's not my business. And I'm here to tell you that's got to go, folks. That attitude has to go. Our attitude now has to be, yeah, I want to get involved. I want to help save a life. That's my friend, and I want to help him. We've got to switch that attitude. And maybe in your generation it's better. In my generation, we have a long way to go to try to switch that thinking to say, let's get involved. So as you watch the video, I want you to consider that. And my challenge to you is, what are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to do to save a life? I'm Robin Fraser Clark, President of the State Bar of Georgia. Suicide has become an alarming problem in our legal community. Suicide is the third leading cause of death of lawyers, and lawyers are 6 times more likely to kill themselves than any other profession. We realized we needed to increase awareness of the risk factors of suicide and the warning signs of someone in a deep enough downward spiral so that members of the bar could help each other get the help they need through the bar. The State Bar has numerous resources through its confidential Lawyers Assistance Program to get the care and medical treatment a lawyer who is in crisis needs to prevent him or her from committing suicide. While watching, keep this in mind. My challenge to you: what are you prepared to do to save a life?
My name is Javon Hicks White. I'm a lawyer, and my husband was a lawyer. At 41, in the prime of his life, he committed suicide.
What I'd like folks to really know about the LAP, the lawyers to know about the LAP, is that we're here to help lawyers.
The Lawyer Assistance Program is a program that's been around for many, many years, and the Georgia State Bar treats it as a clearly confidential service, professional service that is they want to provide and see their members use when needed.
I'm compelled to speak because suicide happens among lawyers, and I think because of our profession, lawyers are not willing to talk about the depression that they're feeling.
You know, we're the helpers. We're the folks that are supposed to take care of the problems of other people. So a lot of lawyers really have a hard time admitting that they need help with something. They keep it in and they don't ask for help. And the reality is lawyers are human, just like everybody else.
It's very stressful to take on other people's problems. And so if you're having problems handling your own problems, you feel not worthy or not able to handle other people's problems. And so you just don't want people to know that you can't handle it all, because that's what we're kind of taught to be able to do, is handle it all.
Suicide is literally the third leading cause of death in lawyers, and that includes old age. Stop and think about that. That's scary. And for that reason, all lawyers need to be a lot more aware of what's going on themselves, emotionally, and with their associates and friends.
We go to the doctor when we're sick. There's nothing any different about recognizing that you need help and going to get it. That is a sign of strength.
Do you think you may have the symptoms of depression? Some of the signs of depression include persistent sad, anxious, or empty feelings, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, or helplessness, irritability, restlessness, loss of interest in activities or hobbies once pleasurable, including sex, difficulty concentrating and making decisions, insomnia or excessive sleeping, overeating, or appetite loss. Symptoms of depression may worsen, and not getting treatment can be life-threatening.
Call us up. If in doubt, call us up. If you have a friend or associate that you think maybe has some issues, call us up.
There's so many other options, and there's so many other angles that someone can take to seek good quality care, confidential, trusted, and be able to find a different way out from the misery that they feel like they live within.
Suicide is a permanent answer to a temporary condition. And we need to do all we can to make people who are feeling that depression to recognize that it's not the period, it's a comma, and there's more to the sentence. And we have not had the conversation. We have not told other lawyers that it's okay to feel depressed. And if it can keep one person from walking down that road to suicide, it's worth what we're doing.
How to save a life. How to save a life. Where did I go wrong? I lost a friend somewhere alone in a bitterness, and I put out.
You can see why we're proud of those efforts. Now I want to introduce to you the president of the Younger Lawyers Division of the State Bar of Georgia, Daryl Sutton.
Before I go on, I want to give Rob another round of applause. I had the pleasure of serving on the executive committee of the State Bar of Georgia last year, this year, and I will again next year. And under Robin's tenure last year, suicide prevention, albeit sadly, but necessarily became a focus of her presidency, and I think she's done an incredible job with an incredibly uncomfortable topic, but one that we must discuss. I want to thank Dean Brokaw and Associate Director for Student Engagement, Jenny Fernandez, for asking me to be here today. As Robin said, I'm the president of the State Bar of Georgia Young Lawyers Division. And I've been asked to speak about some tips for transitioning well from law school into law practice. And in a minute, I'm going to give you 5 tips, by no means an exhaustive list of tips, but 5 tips that I think are important for transitioning well from law school to law practice. Before I do that, though, I want to let you know that you can't understand the importance of developing traits that will make you a well or happy lawyer if you don't understand the consequences of not doing so. So let's talk about the bad stuff first. Lawyers lead all professionals in dissatisfaction with their jobs and careers. Lawyers also lead all professionals in the rate of alcohol and drug dependency. And as you just heard from Robin, suicide among lawyers has reached epidemic proportions. Couple all that with the fact that lawyer unemployment continues to rise, and did again last year, and you may wonder why anybody in their right mind would consider law as their profession. But they do, and in record numbers. A record number, 1,400 law students sat for the July 2013 bar examination. And because of that, there are now over 45,000 lawyers in Georgia alone. So why would 1,400 folks go through 3 years of law school and the rigors of preparing for and sitting for the bar examination? And why would 45,000 total people choose law as a profession if it was going to doom them to dissatisfaction, depression, and potentially, ultimately, suicide? The reality is they wouldn't. So the good news is that those things aren't inevitable, but you have to develop positive traits and the traits that will help you avoid those 3 things. So what I want to do in the few minutes that I have with you today is to discuss the 5 traits, not the 5 traits, but 5 traits of a happy lawyer, and how you can employ them in your transition from law school into law practice, and hopefully become a happy lawyer, and not one of the statistics that I mentioned earlier. Now, before I want to begin, I want to give you 3 caveats. Number 1, this isn't an exhaustive list. Number 2, these traits are in no particular order, and I don't think any one of them is more important than the other. And number 3, and most unfortunately, putting this together made me realize that my mom's advice when I was a little kid is very true. Do as I say and not as I do. Unfortunately, these 5 traits are very good traits, but I haven't always followed them. And I haven't always been the symbol of these 5 traits, but I think they're very important. So let's start with trait number 1. And I actually do think this is the most important. Be wise with your money. Think about the one thing that people worry about the most, and the one thing that drives so many of their decisions, both good and bad. It's money. And being wise with your money starts when you're a law student. When I was in law school, I had a law professor tell me, if you live like a lawyer when you're a law student, you'll live like a law student when you're a lawyer. And that has been very, very good and true advice. Unfortunately, I didn't follow it. And so for 3 very tumultuous years, I spent 3 hard years digging out of all the debt that I acquired when I was in law school and in my first several years of practice, because I thought that I could live like a lawyer at all times. And you can't do it. So those are 3 years of missed opportunities that I'll never get back because I wasn't wise with my money as a law student and as a young lawyer. So be smart with your money. Be disciplined. Save at every opportunity. Don't live beyond your means. Eliminate your debt. And now, invest and plan for retirement. Don't get me wrong. Money isn't the key to happiness. But money does what all happy people have, which is choices. It opens up opportunities for you that you otherwise wouldn't have, and the lack of money or debt will foreclose. Tip number 2 is find a diversion to law practice. Have you ever heard it said that the law is a fickle mistress? How many people have heard that? Have you ever really sat back and thought about what that means? What it means is that the practice of law can be all-consuming if you let it. And the truth is that to practice law well, you'd have to spend a lot of time at it, and it takes a lot of time to do so. So if you don't push back, and especially push back early on, the law will consume you. So you have to find a diversion to it. For me, this diversion or alternative was bar work. I know other lawyers whose diversion is public service, and I know others who find their diversion in service to nonprofits and charities. But your diversion doesn't have to be service. I know lawyers whose diversion is writing. I know others lawyers whose diversion is painting. And I know some who are very masochistic and whose diversion is triathlons and marathons. Nothing I'm interested in, but something that you should whatever the diversion, it doesn't matter what it is. What's important is that you have one. The 3rd trait, know how to say no. Lawyers, for some reason or another, don't know how to say no, whether it be a partner, whether it be a client, whether it be a coworker. We just don't know how to say no. But when we constantly say yes, we find ourselves in situations that consume us and disallow us from doing the things that make us happy or make us satisfied overall. So know how to say no. When a client demands something that you can't deliver, tell them no. I am here as proof positive of the fact that your fear that if you tell a client no, that client will never use you again or you'll never get other clients just isn't true. Your services will always be needed, even if you tell a client no. That same client will come back to you later and will need you, and a future client will need you. It's okay to say no. To a partner, if you're an associate in a law firm, as a partner in a law firm who has associates, I can promise you, I would prefer that they tell me no, that they can't do something, than to tell me yes and then not accomplish it. It both harms me and it ultimately harms them, so know how to say no. The 4th trait, plan and be organized. I am the worst at this. I don't work well unless I'm under pressure. And that's just a trait of most lawyers. We don't work well unless we're working under the gun. But I promise you that when you plan ahead and when you're organized, your life as a law student and as a lawyer will be much happier. Think about it. How stressful is it to have a paper due and to not start on it until a day beforehand and be working on it up until the minute that you have to turn it in? Now think about, and you may have never done this, and I can't speak from experience because I've never done this, but think about how not stressful it would be to have started on that paper a week or 2 in advance. It's the same with a brief when you're in practice or a complaint or an answer. Not only does it reduce the amount of stress and therefore make you happier, but it results in better work product. When you plan in advance and do things in advance, you often have time to reflect upon them, which results in them being done better. And trait number 5, be physically active. This is one I certainly don't follow, although you might not know that from my svelte appearance. The reality is that lawyers, more than any other professionals, allow our profession and the practice to keep us from doing things that will keep us physically fit. And I'm sure that the mental health professionals who are going to speak to you later and anyone else you might encounter will tell you that the key to mental health is physical health. If you're physically healthy, more than likely you're going to be mentally healthy too, because it's indicative of the fact that you get out and take time for yourself. And quite frankly, you're happy with yourself when you're physically fit. So take time. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. Half an hour a day, for instance. Just go out and walk. Get some fresh air. Just do something to get out of your office. Buy a Fitbit. Those things are incredible. It tracks how many steps you take in a day. And just walking around your office instead of sitting at your desk and having somebody bring things to you. That little bit of extra physical fitness can go a long way. Taking the stairs instead of an elevator. But be physically fit. It is imperative for your mental health that you're also physically healthy. You all have a great opportunity. Before I went to law school at Mercer, I went to undergrad at Berry College, and at the entrance to Berry College, there's a gate called the Gate of Opportunity. And so since a very young age, a very impressionable age, I've always had the concept of opportunity drilled into my head. You all have a great, great, great opportunity. Don't squander that opportunity by not taking care of yourselves. If you're going to be successful law students and successful lawyers and seize upon the opportunity that you've been granted, you have to take care of yourselves and you have to do things that will make you happy. It's imperative both to you and to those you serve. Thank you very much. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Catherine Bender, who's going to come and speak to you on behalf of the Dave Nee Foundation.
Okay. I think I got it. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Bender. I'm the Programming Director for the Dave Nee Foundation. And like many of the speakers beforehand, I want to say thank you to Dean Brokaw and to Jenny and Deb, and also to Nick, who, even though we don't have a student advocate position with the Dave Nee Foundation, if we did, Nick would have it. So thank you for being such a good friend to the foundation. I also want to thank all of you. Over the summer, I have custody of my nieces, and this summer we worked on the concept of time. And so I really thought I drilled into their head how many minutes in an hour and how many hours in a day. And so in the fall, when I was Skyping with my niece, Abby, I said, "Now, Abby, do you remember how many hours are in a day?" And she said, "Yes, 27. So I fully recognize that there are not 27 hours in the day, and so having just finished my own doctorate program, I understand how valuable your time is, and so I really appreciate that you as students and practicing attorneys are choosing to spend one of your precious 24 hours with us today, so thank you. I just want to start briefly. Can you just raise your hand if you have someone in your life that you consider to be your go-to person? Great. And just shout out, what are some of the characteristics that make them your go-to person? Okay, I heard responsible, reliable, loyal, caring, listens, non-judgment. Great. So Dave Nee was the go-to person. Dave Nee had a lot of those characteristics. He was the go-to person for his undergraduate classmates from Princeton. He was the go-to person for his little sister Alex, whom he had convinced that if she did exactly what he told her to, she would get a different color karate belt. He was the go-to person for Andrew, who needed advice on dating in New York City. And he was certainly the go-to person for Fordham Law, class of 2005, section 7. Dave had a way of rallying people together. He could make them laugh, and much to the chagrin of his classmates, he was brilliant, and so he could outperform them on exams even if he had attended less classes than they had. So you can imagine their shock, much like we heard earlier, when after finishing Fordham's law school with a job lined up while studying for the bar, that Dave died by suicide. And so because people were devastated by this, and how could they have missed this, and Dave was the go-to person, The foundation has been named in his honor, and we go around the country to deliver these Uncommon Counsel presentations in his honor and to prevent deaths like his from happening. So what we're going to start with today, you heard the mental health professionals are going to talk about signs and symptoms. So let's start really basically about mental health. Everybody's got it. It's just like physical health. In the best case scenario, we all have sort of this sense of peace and balance between our social lives, emotional and psychological states. So what does that mean? That means socially, we have connections. You have go-to people. You have a support system. That means emotionally, when someone asks us how we're doing, we don't just say, I'm fine, with a flat affect. It means we have a full range of emotions. We recognize when we're happy. We recognize when we're angry. We recognize when we're jealous. We're able to identify that emotion, recognize it, and let it go. It passes over us like a wave. We are not getting stuck in any one particular one of those emotions. It means that we have, sorry, that got cut off, effective coping skills. As we talked about, the goal is not to get rid of stress. The goal is to be able to manage our stress. So effective problem-solving skills. That's the best case scenario with mental health, but there are some times that things go wrong. So, when does this light go on in your car? When something's potentially wrong. I drive a 13-year-old car with over 150,000 miles. I fear this light coming on, right? So I like to talk about what are the potential indicators of concern or the check engine lights in ourselves for when something might be wrong. So let's start with physical symptoms. Rapid heartbeat, jaw clenching, headaches, high blood pressure, fatigue. I've had law students look at this slide and look at me and look at the slide and say, but I have all of those. I thought that was normal. It's not normal, and it shouldn't be your normal. Emotional. I like to talk about food, mood, sleep. Food, mood, sleep. Food. Maybe people are overeating because you know what? Food is there and it's comforting. It's non-judgmental. Maybe people are undereating because we feel so anxious that there's that knot in our stomach that prevents us from being able to eat. So overeating or undereating. Mood, you heard it already in the video. Excessive crying, excessive worrying, low self-esteem. Sleep disturbances. And maybe you're sitting here thinking, sleep disturbance, I'd just be happy if I could get some sleep, right? But a sleep disturbance is something where you really try to go to sleep at the same time every night, but you can't fall asleep. Or maybe you have no problem falling asleep, but you wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep. Or maybe you sleep just fine, but when it comes time to get out of bed, it feels like you haven't slept and you don't want to get out of bed. So that's food, mood, sleep. Overreacting to situations. When I was presenting in California, which by the way was much warmer than here in Atlanta, but this student said, you know what, someone cut me off on the freeway and I went from 0 to rage very quickly. He said, and that's when I realized there's something wrong. This is not who I am as a person. So overreacting. And feeling a real sense of purposelessness. And I think any of us who've ever pursued any sort of degree have stopped to say, why am I doing this? What is my purpose? This goes beyond that to say, what is my purpose in being here? Why are people friends with me? Why did this law school admit me? I don't add value. Some more emotional and social. You heard some of these already. Decreased motivation, difficulty concentrating, loss of interest in activities that you used to enjoy. Are there any runners in the crowd? Great. I just did the Tinkerbell half marathon, not because I'm masochistic, but because I got to run in a tutu, and so that was fun. But if you are a runner and you can't tell me where your running shoes are, not because you don't have time, but because you're no longer interested in it, that's a potential indicator of concern. If you've never been a runner and you can't tell me where your running shoes are, that's not a lack of motivation, okay? So just to have that distinction. Decreased trust in others and withdrawing, really wanting to spend time alone. And I had a student critique me once, and she said, you know, I felt like because I'm shy, you were telling me that I'm depressed. And that's not at all what I'm saying. I know that there are introverted people who prefer to spend time by themselves or one-on-one. What I'm talking about is a sudden change. So maybe someone who is very social no longer wants to be social, or even the introvert who has that one go-to person doesn't even want to be involved with that person. Just really, really isolating. Does that make sense? Distinction? Okay. So we talked already about, in the movie, about, when people decide to go to the doctors. Because I think a lot of times students will say, well, those symptoms seem kind of generic. How do I really know when there's a problem? So what's the distinction? What I want you to do is monitor the symptoms. Monitor their frequency, the intensity, and the duration. So maybe when you woke up with a sore throat and a cough, you didn't call the doctor that first day. But maybe after a week, when you still couldn't swallow and your coughing fits were so intense that you had to leave class because you were getting dirty looks from your classmates, maybe that's when you decided to call. It's the same way with these symptoms that we just talked about. How frequently are you having the sleepless nights? How frequently are you skipping meals? How frequently are you excessively crying? How intense is it? Are you crying for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, the whole day? And how long has it been going on? Anything that's 2 weeks or more, we recommend that you get some professional help. If any of those symptoms are interfering with your ability to work, you all have a job as Emory law students, your ability to play, that is to have fun, you are allowed to have fun even though you're Emory law students, or your ability to love. So any relationships, whether they're romantic or not, if those symptoms are interfering with your ability to work, play, or love, also time to talk with someone. And we know, as we heard about already, that law students and lawyers are very private. It's not easy to ask for help. So the Dave Nee Foundation partnered with the JED Foundation to offer you Law Lifeline. It's a free, online, anonymous screening. You can take it for yourself. You can take it for someone else. And it's going to help you monitor those symptoms. And at the end, it will say, based on what you reported, we think you might be experiencing X, Y, or Z. So what if you do that and it says, we think that you might be experiencing depression? Well, you wouldn't be alone. Some studies say that up to 25% of people living in the United States will be diagnosed with depression at some point in their lives. The depression's not the problem. The mood disorder is not the problem. The eating disorder is not the problem. The anxiety disorder is not the problem. The problem is when it goes untreated, when people don't stop and ask for help. What shocked Dave's friends more than the fact that he died by suicide was that he indicated he had been silently suffering from depression, that he felt like a failure. We know when it's left untreated, depression, anxiety can lead to higher rates of substance use and suicide. There's a myth about suicide that there's no warning signs. There often are observable warning signs. And we don't want to place one more thing on your already probably overscheduled docket. However, but I do want to let you know that peers are often in a position to better recognize when someone might be at risk than even mental health professionals. And why is that? Because you know each other. You know each other's behaviors. You know each other's patterns. You know who comes in well-dressed. You know who comes in on time. Okay, so if you started to see changes, you would be in a position to help. So what are some of those observable warning signs? This is from the American Association of Suicidology. Is path warm? And I always laugh a little bit because I don't think is path warm is particularly easy to remember. Okay. So the is, ideation. Okay, ideation is a very clinical term, but it basically means, does someone have the idea of death? Have they made passing comments about their funeral, how they might die? Do they have a plan? Are they wrapping things up? Maybe they've even had a previous suicide attempt. Substance use. Dave's friends knew that he was drinking, but they thought that that's what law students do. They also didn't know that Dave had a Wednesday night guy, a Thursday night guy, a Tuesday night guy. They didn't know that he had a different drinking partner for every night of the week. Path, purposelessness, anxiety, trapped, hopelessness. We talked about the purposelessness a little bit already. We talked at the beginning about stress and how it can be motivating. That's the same as true of anxiety, a healthy dose of anxiety. But when people have that anxiety that interferes with their ability to socialize, their ability to take a test, they start to feel trapped by that anxiety because, oh no, they think about all the what ifs. If I blank out on this test, then I'm going to fail, and then I'm going to have all these loans, and it starts spiraling. And that can make a person feel very hopeless, like they're backed up against a wall. That can be a lethal combination. So that's the is and the path. Warm, withdraw. Dave stopped coming to his bar review classes. That's withdrawal. Anger and recklessness. Unfortunately, in men, depression often goes underdiagnosed because if men get in bar fights or speeding tickets, I don't agree with this gender stereotype, but it's the gender stereotype that's just boys being boys. It's not seen as a possible sign or indication of depression. Mood change. If you take away nothing from today except to say that you notice a change in someone, a change in their appearance, the well-dressed person's coming in pajamas, the person who's always early comes in halfway through class, that's the time to intervene. Dave's friends will say, looking back on it, there was just something that changed in him. So I know I've got to speed up. So what should you do now that we've told you about these symptoms? Well, I always say what not to do. Especially if someone's talking about suicide, do not promise secrecy. What else not to do? Don't minimize it or ignore it. When people experience depression, there is such a guilt and sense of shame that comes with it. So I've literally had people say to me, I do not have a right to be depressed. I'm at a top law school. People have it so much worse off than me. So if people feel that shame and guilt and they confide in you and you say, oh, it's not that bad, that can be really harmful and can shut them down. So try not to minimize it. What you can do is go back to those things that you said about your go-to people. Listen. Listen non-judgmentally. Let someone know you care. We could have Valentine's Day every single day of the year. It never hurts to let someone know that we care about them. It's not a typo up there. It's not supposed to say CPR. QPR is a particular type of suicide prevention. Question, persuade, refer. Question, persuade, refer. So you say, Dana, I noticed you've been coming in late to class. Usually you're here early. Is everything okay? And maybe they give you an answer and you say, I'm not totally convinced. I hear what you're saying, but do you know that law students have higher rates of depression and anxiety than other students? I think we should get you some help. Why don't we go talk to someone in the Office of Student Engagement? Why don't we go talk to someone at the Lawyer's Assistance Program? So you question, persuade, refer. You are not responsible for providing the help, but you are in a place where you can refer somebody to get the help and recognize it. I'm not going to spend my precious 15 minutes talking about these resources because you've heard about them already today. We also have a brochure designed specifically for you with the Emory resources that's at a table in the back. We also have pens as incentives to fill out the feedback form that you got when you came in today. But you have a lot of resources here locally, and a lot of them are free, which I know as a student is important. If it's free, it's for me. So I'll end quickly. Stay well. And I had a law student tell me, your wellness strategies, they're really kind of basic. And I said, well, you know what? If they're so basic and everyone's following them, why do we have the statistics that we do? So use this as a reminder. Sleep, 6 to 8 hours a night. We know that when drivers are driving with little sleep, they are at more risk to drivers than when driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Yet we still convince ourselves that pulling an all-nighter is effective. Take breaks. Recess was there for a reason, right? Cognitively, we can only endure so much. Have allies. As much as I want you to have a support system here at Emory with one another, I want you to have friends outside of law school. They will remind you that you have an identity beyond Emory law student. You are someone's child, perhaps you're someone's parent or sibling. You have an identity outside of Emory law student. Yoga or deep breathing, especially for those of you who experience anxiety, some of the practices of yoga can help you to alleviate those symptoms. Well-balanced meals, and I usually get the comment, if you're going to talk about well-balanced meals, don't serve us pizza. Well, we didn't today. Okay, so yay, Emory. Exercise. I have spin bikes there because I'm a certified spinning instructor, but also because we know when people exercise in groups, or you runners, when you have a running partner, you're more likely to stick to it than if you were just doing it on your own. And I know that there are perfectionists here in this room, and the idea of letting go of things that you can't control, or actually recognizing that there are things out of your control, is really hard. But you cannot control everything, so let go of those things you can control and laugh. Allow yourself the opportunity to laugh. It costs nothing. It doesn't take much time. I always end with this picture because I travel a lot. I was just saying today, since January 18th, this is my 27th flight. I spent a lot of time in airports. Every security system has their own way of saying, if you see something unusual, say something. So that's parting message one. If you see something unusual in yourself, a friend, a colleague, a client, say something. The second is, what do they tell you to do with that oxygen mask once you get on the plane? Help yourself first. As much as Uncommon Counsel is about educating you to recognize signs and symptoms of depression and suicide in friends or colleagues, we ultimately want you to get the message loud and clear to ask for help. Put your own oxygen mask on first so that you can become the best lawyer or best counselor that you can be. Thanks.
Okay, so now Dr. Dana Weiner is joining me up here. Does everybody who wants a clicker have a clicker? Wave them in the air. Clickers? Okay. So some of you have done this clicker thing before. For those of you who have not, it's kind of fun. What we're going to do is we're going to put up some questions, and don't overthink this. Your clicker has little buttons on it that will correspond to the numbered multiple choice questions, and we want you to just pretty quickly press the answer that occurs to you as the appropriate answer for you in your individual situation. The fun part about this is that it actually will graph the results for us in real time. So that's what we're going to do, and Dr. Weiner is going to, offer a little context as we go through this. So there we go. Don't overthink this. Just click away, and when we've got a critical mass of responses, I'll compile the report. Okay, so this is how it works. Check that out.
Yeah. So 76%, and that's, goes along with some of the statistics that were presented earlier, that 1 in 5 people will be diagnosed or at least meet the symptoms for depression at some point during their lives.
Yeah.
Okay, so 36% saying yes, 64% saying no. That means 1 out of every 3 people in this room has been directly impacted by the loss of someone to suicide at some point, and that's about reflective of what we see.
Mm-hmm. Now, I really hope that you guys were listening to Dr. Bender, and I really hope that many of you are going to be able to answer in the affirmative to this. Yay! Good job! Go Emory Law! And if you don't know the resources, you've heard about some of them. By the way, the State Bar Lawyer Assistance Program is also available for free to law students. It's a huge asset to us. The other thing is there are going to be, as I said, resources listed and available with information out at the tables. The Dave Nee Foundation has kindly donated those custom brochures that Dr. Bender held up, which you should have been able to pick up out front, that list many of the resources, and I'm going to mention a few more at the end of the program.
Terrific.
All right, well,
That
we
means
got
we're
one person, two
doing-
people who aren't so sure, but we'll get to
Right.
you. So we're not going to dwell on this heavily, but I would love it, since you're able to share in safe anonymity, if you would just, take a look at this and say, have you had one or more of these reactions? Part of the purpose of doing this is so that everybody who's in here participating can see you're not alone. You're not the only person who's having these experiences, and a number of you may end up clicking number 8, more than one of the above.
Okay, yeah, so number 8, 66%. And interestingly, 66% more than one, and then the others. So actually, I do have one comment about this. I think that in general, and I see this at Emory, but definitely amongst very high-achieving populations, we have this incredible ability to ignore, rationalize these early warning signs until they just sort of knock us off our feet. We're sick. We can't possibly continue to perform the way that we do. So if you take note of these signs early on, that's a great time to access help and resources.
A few more. Again, number 8 allows you to say more than one of the above.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would also emphasize too that none of these symptoms in and of themselves are diagnostic. Together, certainly, they do create a picture of more stress, anxiety, but you don't have to wait until you meet the diagnostic criteria for a mental disorder or illness to come in and get help. In fact, it's better. It's better to go earlier.
Now, again, keep in mind this is about feelings as opposed to the physical reactions. And I know those of you who are already lawyers are looking at this list going, are you serious? Like every lawyer I know, Well, that's the issue, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, yes, it may be a very common thing in this profession, but again, knowing yourself and knowing when you see changes.
Yeah. Well, you guys are fast on the draw. Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once again, very high percentage, but you can see that you're not the only one experiencing these symptoms. And again, catch it while it's early. That's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And having these kinds of feelings does not mean that you're in the wrong profession or the wrong school or that this is not a worthy pursuit. It is a worthy pursuit. It's a great profession. It's a great career. You do belong here because we don't admit students who don't belong here, basically. We know that you can do this, but we want to make sure that you all know, this is hard. It's like baseball in a league of their own. If it were easy, everybody would do this, right? And it's not that easy, but it can be extremely rewarding once you understand how to tackle those challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just going to say, too, the first 2 items were pretty low, and they were positively framed, right? Mm-hmm. Protective factors. And so it's known that, yes, you can be experiencing the negative impact of stress, but if you are nourishing yourselves and building resilience, that will serve as a protective factor for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now, number 6, I guarantee you that some of the folks who checked number 7, more than one of the above, probably a bunch of them are thinking number 6, lawyers and law students do not like unfamiliar situations and surprises, even us former litigators or current litigators. You know, that's why we're planning ahead. That's why what Robin said about, you know, what we do is we think through worst case scenario. That's part of what we are taught to do as lawyers. But the key here is to be able to separate what you're called upon to do professionally and how you go through life personally. So.
And something to add there is that our brains, we know from studies in neuroscience, neurobiology, we are Teflon for positives, and we are Velcro for negatives. I don't know if anyone's ever heard that expression before. So it takes a lot more for us to hold the positives, and we really do need to like take the time to really hold on to the positive things that are happening. Because again, from evolutionary standpoint, yeah, it's better to have the false positive, to be on guard, but not, you know, in our everyday lives, the lives that we're leading every day.
So one thing I just want to point out is a number of people answered that they haven't discussed these kinds of reactions or feelings with anyone, and the reason we have not applicable is that the feedback we got last time we did this program is some people were like, well, I haven't had those feelings, so of course I haven't discussed them with anyone. If you are having those kinds of reactions and feelings, please discuss them with someone who can help. You can come and talk to me. I like to tell students I've got a pretty effective cone of silence in my office. That does not mean that if the situation is serious, I'm not going to tell anyone else, because I'm going to do my best to get somebody help. But the lawyer assistance program is confidential. Again, they're not going to hold it to themselves if the situation is one of imminent harm, but they will be as confidential as, you know, any professional outside therapist is going to be, which is at a very, very high level. There are so many resources here on the campus, and you know, if you don't want to use resources on campus, we have the ability to refer people to help outside the campus setting. So, you know, I really do beg of you, if you are having these kinds of reactions and feelings, please let someone know who can help. You can even send a friend to talk to me, and I can communicate information that way. I also, when we close the program, I'm going to talk about a couple of other options. I want to say a little bit about it.
Yeah. So some of the items on here, right? The barriers to having that conversation with somebody, and specifically around the bar, and you've mentioned a number of resources that are confidential. And I would just add to that CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services. We are confidential, again, with the exception of imminent risk of danger to yourself or others. So that's confidential. It's not part of your student record.
That's right. And I could call Dr. Weiner, which I would never do, but if I called her and said, has my student so-and-so come in to see you, she would not tell me. And she's not going to call me and say, so-and-so has come in here and told me X, Y, and Z, unless, one, there's that risk of imminent harm, or two, the student has asked her to share that information with me, which students can do. I mean, I've actually sat in on counseling sessions once or twice with students over the last 9 years at their request. So, you know, again, please, please reach out for whatever you need. Okay, this is the substance issue. This is real, this is serious, this is a big issue on virtually every university campus. Now, caffeine, guilty, hello, you know. I mean, I'm not sure of a law school that does get by without significant amounts of caffeine. But, you know, there's a difference between having your 2 cups of coffee and having 5 Starbucks ventis a day. Not good, believe me. I've had that conversation with a student who thought he was having heart attacks. And I just, you know what, a little bird said to me, there's something else going on. And I said to him, how much caffeine are you drinking? He goes, well, I drink a lot of Starbucks. I said, how much? 5 Starbucks ventis a day. No. So, you know, Red Bull, watch it. You know, no dose, not a good idea. Caffeine in tablet form, you know, unless it's like that migraine thing that you take once in a while, you know, really, just, I recommend don't go there. Prescription drugs are a huge problem on every university campus. Just want to let you know, since I am a lawyer and you all would like to be lawyers or are already lawyers, using prescription drugs, including all those stimulants, without a prescription is a felony. That's the kind of stuff that can keep you from pursuing your professional goals. And it's very dangerous. And it's just not a good idea. Those stimulants should only be taken under the supervision of a doctor and only by prescription.
Yeah, and you can see how easily, I mean, any of the things on this list as coping strategy. So maybe in the short term, you get a little boost, but long term, it is not sustainable. It will not work. Caffeine and
Yeah.
more than one, yeah.
Okay, now we're moving on a little more to sort of, you've heard from Dr. Bender. A lot of these things, you know, it doesn't seem like rocket science, but it can be very hard to remember to do these things. And actually, I'll let Dr. Weiner talk just a little bit about reframing, because that's actually turns out to be very important.
Yeah. So in reframing, you know, it's actually very interesting, but it's this idea of taking, right, a situation that may at first glance look not so positive, right, pretty negative, but then spinning it and trying to see the positive aspects. And I've got an example. Okay, so performance, right? When you're maybe doing mock trials, or and you get your anxiety, you know, your heart is beating fast, your cortisol, adrenaline is pumping through your bodies. Experiment with this, right? Experiment with interpreting those physical cues as signs of readiness, excitement, because it matters. It matters the way that you interpret those cues, and it's found that people who are able to reframe those internal experiences are able to really deal much better with the stress, the heavy
And I'll
stress.
tell you the greatest reframing phrase that was ever shared with me when I was a young litigator, which I actually still use, is you will not be able to eliminate those butterflies in your stomach, just get them flying in formation. And that's such a great way of realizing, use that energy. It's nervous energy. Use that energy to move you forward and to achieve your goals, but don't be like the butterflies are going ping pong all over your stomach. You know, channel it, direct it.
Which again also ties in with the mindfulness practices. You know, just know that there's going to be times when you're going to be experiencing stress and anxiety. It's normal. We're supposed to experience the full range of emotion. That's healthy. That's what a psychologically healthy person is able to do. So, no, it's okay. Yeah. So, and I think Dr. Bender referred to this, but right, like acceptance of those feelings. Don't try to fight them, but just they're normal or okay, and then use whatever strategy that you have to just redirect your focus back on the task in a non-judgmental, compassionate way.
And this, this list here, this sounds like the have a nice life mom advice. And guess what? Mom was right. These things do, in fact, make your day-to-day existence more manageable, more pleasant, less stressful. It's hard to do some of these things when you're in law school. Sleep, there's this constant temptation. Well, I'm just, one more paragraph or, study one more chapter, all that. Helping others, law school can be very isolating. One of the reasons why we deliberately promote a strong student community and lots of helping and service activities, both amongst each other and out in the community, is because we know it's going to make law school less isolating and less isolated and make it a more bearable, in fact, pleasant experience.
And when you don't have time to do the big things, this is such a powerful thing. At the end of the day, just write down 3 things, small things, that you felt a sense of gratitude for that day. do it for a week, do it for 2 weeks, just see what happens. But I strongly encourage you to experiment with that. It's a very, very powerful intervention. Mm-hmm.
And even if it's just, I'm grateful that the nice guy at the copy center smiled at me this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Little things, little things. So here's where the rubber meets the road. Which of these things have you actually done or tried to do or sought after during the last week? Well, that's pretty good.
Great,
Yeah,
excellent.
excellent. You all are listening.
job.
That's great. So, keep it up. And if you see that a peer or a friend, colleague, classmate is not practicing good self-care, say something. I mean, it's the old, if you see something, say something. It's okay. It's not being intrusive or nosy, or, you'll know what to say to someone that you're close to. Hopefully you've had some opportunities to help others and engage in pleasant or sociable activities. And if
again,
you're not
small
getting enough of those
things.
opportunities, let us know. We'll generate more.
But small things, smiling at somebody that you wouldn't ordinarily smile at, you'd be amazed at just kind of the feeling that it gives you.
I will tell you right now that one of the ready sources of smiles in this building, other than our hallway, of course, is Miss Cat in Miss Jean's place. You go in there and you wish her a good day and ask how she's doing, and she's got a smile that will light up your world. So she's accustomed to sort of cheering up stressed out law students. Okay, now here's another rubber meets the road. So self-care, stress relief, however you define that, including based on these prior conversations. Again, this is not to sort of trap you in an answer, but this is to get you to think and ask yourselves, how much time really am I sort of giving to myself to be well and healthy and reasonably happy? Oh, it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So up to 1-2 hours. Can we take it up a little bit? If you need help figuring that out, come and see me. I'm not going to dwell on this one. Again, this is not to sort of trap you in, oh, you bad law students, you're not using your time effectively, or you bad lawyers. It is known, and you can read the preview, the sort of summary of an article in the materials that I gave you. There's actually been a study done of how law students use time and what their time management deficiencies are. And one of them that is known to generate a lot of stress is a deficiency in the area of previewing. In other words, planning ahead, just what Daryl was talking about, sitting down and actually being realistic about how long is this going to take, what is it going to take to get this done, what resources do I need, and planning ahead effectively enough so that you don't end up in a time-pressured panic and crunch. So definitely take a look at that article, and there are a couple of other articles in there from a website called Time Management for Lawyers, that even though it's actually, some of those materials were written before smartphones and all of that, the principles are still very, very applicable. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, and I have to say, I would have to characterize myself as someone who could use time more effectively. And we're all in this boat together. If you come by my office, one of my Dean's Teaching Fellows actually wrote up this fall for other students a time management sort of a list of things you can do as a law student at the start of the semester, over the course of the semester, monthly, weekly, daily. It's a magnificent document, and I highly recommend it. Yeah, I mean, there it is.
Yeah, and I would say too, I mean, this is something that we see so often in the counseling center, and going along with planning, the prioritization, because, you know, everybody's here because you've achieved at such high levels to get here. But then it's just sort of like, there's so much. And so how do you prioritize, you know, because you're not going to be perfect at everything anymore. It's just not. Yeah.
So we're going to finish up. That's it for the clickers, but now we're going to open it up to questions. And Dr. Weiner
Sure.
is here at your disposal. We've got a microphone in the back center, and I think Jenny may even have a handheld mic. If you've got a question, just put a hand up, and you know, we can start talking about this.
You talked earlier about not minimizing someone. I'm concerned about maximizing something. Like, I love self-deprecating. It's my way of kind of blowing off steam and making fun of myself and things that I do. But I've had people take that and run and think, oh my gosh, I'm such a mess. And then I feel worse because your mom is very successful. So my question is, how do we find that balance and not looking past something that we should address, but not overdoing the worry.
Yeah. Okay. So I had a little bit of a hard time hearing parts of that, but let me just repeat back. So, right, because it helps, right, humor to sort of make fun, or this is sort of, right, in a way minimizing the.
For me, it does, but I've had people react like they're really worried about me, and then I get more worried about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Spiral. But I think I'm more concerned that I can't sometimes say those things in front of other people because they'll maximize what I do.
Yeah.
It's my way of dealing with it.
They may not understand for you that that is how you blow off steam, and it doesn't mean that things are, you know, way out of proportion, right? It's one of your stress management strategies, and you know, I don't know how people respond to you know, you letting them. 'Cause I imagine when people express concern, saying, hey, you know, this is how I do blow off steam, and I do appreciate your you know, the concern that you have, but this is definitely one of my ways of blowing off steam. But I think internally, right, the doubt that kicks in, like, oh, maybe I am actually more stressed than I'm acknowledging, right? And I do think it's about really like learning to sort of just like tune in, you know, to know for you, like pay attention to like what you feel inside. When you're feeling overwhelmed, how do you know? Right? Like for some people, it's the thought racing, it's the knot in the stomach, it's the, you know, and it's just like, and knowing what the signs are, so that you can sort of read your own emotional cues can really help give you a good grounding, even if other people maybe, you know, they don't have that insight.
I think we need to take a few more questions, and then we're going to have our final speakers. Yeah, Michael.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I'm a lawyer and a government student, and I could make a lot of comments about what the profession has done in terms of increasing the stress level on those of us from a time standpoint. And this is perhaps more of a comment than a question I would direct to Dean Brokaw. If law schools have done any kind of research or given any thought to the fact that the entire law school experience kind of propels the student into that sort of a stress by having a teaching a course for an entire semester, giving you one exam and 3 hours to take it.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of legal educators are giving a lot of thought to that. Some of you may have noticed, for instance, that more of our faculty are giving midterm exams. Now, I would never really want to be out there saying, yay, midterm exam, but the fact is they're doing it to take some of the pressure off that final. So, you know, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. There's a whole section in the Association of American Law Schools now that's called Balance in Legal Education. And I was just at the AALS annual meeting in January and spent most of a Sunday in that section's meetings and programs, there are a lot of very thoughtful educators who are raising these topics. One of the reasons that this kind of programming, it's now possible to do that, is that, you know, we're gaining momentum inside the world of legal education. So we got a ways to go. I personally think that we could emulate better some of the practices of other professional schools, but yes, there is a lot of attention being paid to this and the momentum is building. So, someone behind you? And then I think this will be our last question, and then I'm going to have Bob and Jessica come up. Yeah. Can you speak louder so everyone can hear you? Yeah, and actually the top item in the handout materials is a really excellent, relatively recent piece specifically about some of the interactions that lawyers have, law students have with other people that generate a lot of this pressure and stress, and some suggestions about both how to handle those interactions and, in a sense, how to reframe them. And part of the reframing really is, you know, the happiest lawyers I know, and I know many happy, successful lawyers who love practicing law, they have figured out how to, in a sense, compartmentalize and how to do what they need to do as lawyers who operate in an adversarial structure and separate that from who they are as human beings and how they interact with each other and with their colleagues in the profession and with their families and their loved ones and their friends and the person who just took the parking spot that you wanted. You've got to figure out how to separate those things. Because some of the most unhappy lawyers I know, because I know some of them too, have not managed to separate, you know, when you got to put up your dukes as a lawyer and when you need to put down your fist and extend a friendly hand. And, you know, that's the best way that I can put that. And that's one of the reasons why we work pretty hard in this law school to build that sense of community and connection so that people have multiple opportunities to interact and engage with each other in more positive ways. I think that's going to be our last question for now, because I want to bring up now Bob Rubin and Jessica Ames, both alumni of this law school, who are our final speakers, and both rough, tough litigators, although they're also extremely nice people, so they've clearly figured out how to draw that line.
You know those reactions to stress, those feelings and reactions, I'm feeling most of those right now. Except for the diarrhea part, I'm fine. In the movie Wall Street, Gordon Gekko famously said, "Greed is good." And I'm here to tell you, stress is good. It is a great weight loss device. I tried a murder case in January. I lost 3 pounds in 1 week. No physical exercise is needed. Energy, stress will give you energy. 4 o'clock in the morning, your eyes open up, you forgot to subpoena witnesses, you forgot to do this or that, you're wide awake for the rest of the day. You don't need sleep when you're stressed out. I'm joking, of course. Stress is bad. Stress is a part of our profession. We don't need to run from it. We just need to know how to manage it. I've been trying cases for 27 years as a criminal defense lawyer. So people's lives are literally in my hands when I handle a case. And that keeps me up at night. That makes me lose weight. Those things it's difficult, and I've had to learn how to handle stress. Robin mentioned we lost a friend a year ago, a criminal defense lawyer who committed suicide in the parking lot of the State Bar building, a friend of mine, a guy I had tried cases with. It got me thinking, I'm not a mental health professional, I'm a lawyer. But I realized that my association, the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, in my 27 years of going to their meetings 3 times a year, had never once had a program about stress. So with Jessica's help, we spoke to 200 criminal defense lawyers, and I'm talking gunslingers, people who walk into court every day and fight like hell to save someone's life, fight with judges, fight with clients, fight with prosecutors, hard-nosed, hard-bitten, half of them are alcoholics. I'm just kidding again, they're not alcoholics. But these are tough people, and that's just the women. And yet, after speaking to them for an hour about just raising the issue, we need to talk about the stress we're under because we're losing our friends, not just to suicide, but to depression and to other areas of mental illness. I can't tell you the number of these lawyers who came up to us afterwards and thanked us for talking about something that had never really been talked about. And I was shocked by the reaction because I really felt like I was doing this for me more than for them. And yet, to this day, that was in January, we're now in March, I'm still getting feedback from those lawyers who would never share with me their feelings about how good a program it was, how isolated they felt in their profession, how overworked and underappreciated the public defenders felt. And so I think we realized it needs to be talked about a lot more. Stress is a part of the fabric of being a lawyer. We need to embrace it and learn how to handle it, and I think Jessica, having been both a litigator now and a mental health professional, can help us with that.
Okay. So to wrap us up, one of the things they asked us to do kind of in closing is to try and draw some pieces together and let you leave with things that you can kind of hold in your hand, things to do or things to think about. We've had a lot of recommendations, and this is really what we did in some respects with the State Bar, is we talked about it from a personal standpoint as attorneys and as litigators, and it's really, I have 3 points that I'm going to make, and it's things that you can do as you leave here. And the first one is what I now talk to myself and clients about is watch your transitions. And what I mean by transitions is this idea that what makes us very good litigators, what we value in each other as litigators, are traits that include things like being pessimistic, had mentioned, competitive, assertive, aggressive, unobjective, unemotional. And that when you leave the work and professional environment and you carry those traits into your homes in the evening, and let those continue to flow out with your significant others and your roommates and your best friends, it can really create a lot of stress at the personal level. And so because when you're transitioning in those evening hours, that's when you're transitioning into the place of where you're looking around for warmth and connection and compassion and empathy. And so I think that just an awareness as lawyers that you're doing that on a daily basis in a way that a lot of other people are not doing. And it requires just awareness that that's something that we have to kind of put into our day-to-day life. The second one is, and I'm going to give you so the science is in, there's just absolutely no doubt that meditation works. And I am absolutely awful at it. I've tried. I've got every app on the phone. the ladies are talking in your ears. But I did find something, and I'm not seeing our slides here, but there is an app that you can get called Brainwave 30. And I have used it. I've actually got several clients using it now. You can put it right on your phone. And it's a, and she's not here because she could answer it, but it's putting in sound waves with no voice, and you can do it in your office. If you're looking for concentration, that's going to be a certain program you've hit. If you're looking to go to sleep at night, there's ones for that. But I would offer that out there for those of you who do not try meditation or have not found it successful like me. This one is actually working, and people are really liking it. You can put it on your phone. And then my third thing is, what I would do is I would ask you to go home and find your significant person. Where are you safe? Who are you connected with? Who really knows you? And I would ask that person 2 questions. I would ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how is the quality of our relationship with each other right now? How are we doing? And then I would ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think I'm doing? Because I think sometimes we don't realize, for example, in that transition phase, I was really doing a poor job of my transitions, transitioning at home to my husband and my 3 young sons, kind of coming in full bore and staying in my litigator mode. And I really wasn't aware that that was a point of struggle for me, but they certainly were. And so that with those 2 questions, you're going to get a lot of really good information pretty quickly about where you should be celebrating and what you're doing really well, and where maybe you want to start looking for some support.
One of the things that I learned fairly recently. I'm not much for self-help books. I find them boring and obvious. You want to be good at time management, manage your time better. That's the kind of what I take away from those kinds of books. But there was one person who I found very helpful, and her name is Brene Brown, B-R-E-N-E, Brown. She gave a very famous TED Talk, one of the most popular TED Talks in the history of TED Talks. And I would urge you to take a minute or 15 minutes and watch that TED Talk and buy one of her books. What she basically talks about is how we need to be more authentic. And by authentic, it means open with others about ourselves. One of the things I think I had a problem with and that caused me stress is I always felt, someone mentioned it in one of the questions, criticized. I was always afraid of what people, including judges and prosecutors, were thinking about me. And in a way, you have to be like Craig Kimbrell, the Braves closer. You have to forget that bad performance and just move on to the next performance. And I had a little bit of a hard time letting go, and I had a hard time sharing my true self with others instead of really always trying to put on my best face. And she resonated with me that it's okay to be flawed. You know why? Because we're all flawed. We all have problems. We're all feeling stress. If you're in law school, you're stressed out. If you're a practicing lawyer, you're stressed out at some point or another. And it's okay to share that. And just being able to, just knowing that I could share that or should share that for my own mental well-being was very helpful to me. So I hope it's helpful for you too. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that mostly concludes our program. Thank you so much for taking part. Thank you very much to our visitors and guests. We have gifts for you, which I will give you in just a few minutes. Just want to point out to all the students who are here, we have a lot of stuff going on that's available to you. Please check out the State Bar's resources. You can join as a student member. You have access to the Lawyer Assistance Program, and we've got information out there. The university nutritionist is sitting at one of the information tables out there. She is a wonderful lady named Carol Kelly, and her nephew was actually one of Dave Nee's best friends and helped start this foundation, and he's an assistant U.S. attorney in Washington. So it's just pure dumb luck that she happens to be an Emory colleague. She's a wonderful and lovely person, and by the way, March is National Nutrition Month. The Student Counseling Center has today reopened the interactive screening program that we launched last year with their help. It will be reopened this week. as part of our Wellness Week. It's the anonymous online screening program where you can go on and answer questions about your state of mind, and a real live counselor will review your answers and reach out to you again completely anonymously. It's run through a third-party website to offer suggestions, ask you follow-up questions, and even if you choose to say who you are, set up an appointment for you. So look for more information about that. We will be taking part in a pilot program in early April. It's the first national study of its kind on law student well-being. We're one of 18 law schools piloting this survey. Look for more information about that, but I'm really happy to let you all know today that we will be taking part in that. As usual, we'll be doing the Law Student Survey of Student Engagement in March, right after spring break. That's a really important mechanism for you all to tell us about your overall educational experience here, which, as we know, can support or undermine your sense of being able to manage stress. So tell us, please tell us. We have a dean who takes that data extremely seriously. He reads it, he asks questions about it. So, you know, the higher the response rate is, the more information he's got. The pet therapy dogs are coming again this week. They will be here tomorrow and Wednesday out on Bacardi Plaza, 11:30 to 1:30. You don't need an appointment. You just drop by and share the love, as the saying goes. The Emory Police will be tabling later this week on personal safety as an aspect of wellness, so look for them in the Student Commons area later this week. Don't forget, we've got the new Xbox 360 Connect. It's installed in the student lounge. We've got fitness games, dance games. We've even got a meditation game and a sci-fi kind of woo-woo, new agey game that actually allows you to explode virus blobs with your fingers. It's very cool. I've done it. Anyway, the whole point there is just to have some fun, laugh. Let me just tell you, if you want a huge laugh, get some of your friends to try out some of the dance games. We've got Zumba, we've got Michael Jackson. If that doesn't make you laugh hysterically, nothing will. I think that's about it in terms of the specifics, but, you know, again, take good care of yourselves, help us, help you, let us know what you need. And now I'm going to announce the raffle winners for the highly nutritious Highland Bakery gift cards. 887805 and 887834. If you all are here, come up and get your gift cards. If you're not here, I will figure out another way to hand out those gift cards. All right, thank you so much.